And you can see all these are small little coffee trees, and there's different structure here. First of all, if you look on the ground, we've got weeds growing here, okay, other plants which aren't covering the soil completely right here, because this is where we walk all the time, so they get trampled on. But if you go further on in where we don't walk, there's a lot of weeds growing on the ground. Second, you have the coffee as a little understory bush, and third, we have the shade trees, okay, which granted they're not big trees, big tall trees. And you do have to have a balance of shade and sunlight too. Okay? If you have too much shade, the coffee won't produce. So you need to get that balance as far as how much sunlight you have. And this specific shade tree, which in Spanish is poro, or erythrina is the genus, becomes the key to growing organic coffee, basically. Okay? Now, first of all, they're important for providing shade. Okay? But second, and most important, is that they're actually nourishing the soil, because these are legumes. Okay, the poro is like a giant bean plant. Basically, if you look at the leaves, it looks like a bean leaf. And what legumes do is they take nitrogen from the air and put nitrogen into the soil. And nitrogen is one of the nutrients that plants use the most. Okay, and the more nitrogen they have, the more they will produce, and the more they will grow. So, since we're not using any fertilizers as far as nitrogen goes, because most of the sources for nitrogen are chemically produced and laboratory produced, so we can't use those on organic. These trees are providing most of our fertilizer in the soil.
What is the name? The tree, and
it's very fast growing. And the way to plant a new tree is you cut a branch and stick it in the ground and it grows. So that it just happens to be the most convenient tree. And that's what we have over the whole farm, is this kind of tree. And if you let it grow up, it'll get enormous. And this is a really old tree. It's, you know, a big trunk. It's kept small, because if you let it grow in about 5 or 6 years, it's going to be as tall as these pine trees. It's producing here, and next year it'll produce only out here, whatever it grows this year. So if you have a tree that's this tall, you're losing more than a meter down here that's not producing anything at all. That's lost space. Okay, and it's all hand picked. So if you have a tree that's too big, it's hard to pick. Okay, but the main reason is to get new growth on the tree. And this is about 6 years of growth right here, each one of these. And when you do cut each stalk, each stem, it stimulates, you can see here, okay, where it was cut, it stimulates the trunk to put out new growth, okay, which will produce 2 years later. Okay, so you basically rejuvenate the growth on the tree. And that's why you'll see no trees bigger than these. So that happens in February. In March, our climate starts drying up a little bit. Here you can see this is a branch that was just stuck in the ground several months ago, and it's growing up as a shade tree. So here there are mainly younger trees here, and you can see where there's an old trunk, and we just leave them in there because it's impossible to pull them out unless you have a tractor, because they have such a big root system after 20-30 years that you can't pull them out that easily. And the new tree is producing a lot right now, but there is a big old, really old tree back here. If you come in a little further, you can see it well. There we go. See the base? The base is very thick. Okay, so this is well over 30 years, this tree.